If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard in Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pro Wrestle Zone podcast. As always, Dan the Beast 94 alongside with me is the DVD Freak. And today we got a popular topic of discussion here, something that I've been wanting to bring up on the channel as of late, and that is TNA, or known as Impact Wrestling nowadays. Boy, I really don't know where to start because I feel like TNA has such a long, prestigious history within the amount of just being around for only 18 years. And I still feel like it's a fresh company. I still feel like it can still go off on the right foot, despite having its little dwindles and downward period throughout the past couple of years. But I think these past 2 or 3 years, Impact TNA has really re-elevated itself to being that top tier company. Freak, thoughts, like what was your first initial thoughts, or what was your first initial memories of hearing or witnessing TNA?
I definitely remember the weekly pay-per-view days, but I didn't become like a real fan, I think, until around the time Christian Cage jumped. That's when I was like, oh shit, because I was always a Christian fan, and when I heard he jumped, I definitely tuned in, and I was hooked. I loved TNA from 2005 to around 2009. Those were kind of my peak years of paying attention weekly. I didn't watch Impact every week. That was back when I still was watching Raw and SmackDown. But Impact I would try to catch if I was able to, or I'll definitely read up on it and try my best to catch the pay-per-views. And I always really loved, me being the DVD freak, I always loved their DVDs.
Oh yeah, sure.
Just they look great on a shelf. They always had a match listing on the back. They never had inserts, unfortunately. But, I always thought they did a really good job with their DVDs. And so I started collecting those, I don't know, 2006? Nah, probably like 2007. And I ended up giving away a bunch of them and selling a bunch off. But I'm in the process now I'm like halfway done in terms of the collecting. I had to stop recently. But, it's still so much fun to go back, even if it's just having a YouTube clip, 50 craziest moments, stuff like that. And there's nothing to me like hearing Mike Tenay and Don West on commentary freaking out. It was special. It really was. And then I just kind of lost interest, but we'll get to that. What were your first introductions?
Oh boy, I remember my brother bringing it up to me because he used to have like the pay-per-view cable box, and he was talking about like how there was this company that would air weekly pay-per-view specials, and he was bringing up a couple names, like he brought up like Road Dogg, X-Pac, Jerry Lynn, Jeff Jarrett, and like in my mind, I'm already blown away because I'm sitting there like, wow, these are guys who I haven't heard of since like the late Attitude Era, going into the early 2000s. So I was mind blown, and this was like 2004, prior to them landing a deal with Spike TV. So I was like, damn, and never got a chance to watch it. And, my brother was like, oh, you got to check this out, man. Like, but never got a chance to until they finally decided, or when Spike TV was airing commercials for TNA Impact was coming to Spike TV. And I think this was right around the time, I could be wrong about this, but I believe this was still around the time that Raw was still a part of Spike TV, as Raw was part of Spike for probably like 2 or 3 years before going back to the USA Network.
Yeah, they didn't. October of 2005 is when they eventually went to USA Network.
Yeah. So okay, so that sounds about right. And I remember I catched in the first episode of TNA Impact, which was right around the same time. I believe it was October 2005. And I don't specifically remember the first match, but I remember AJ Styles making his entrance, and I was just like, wow, who the fuck is this guy? I wasn't familiar with Styles at that time. I never knew about his WCW career. I never knew about anything prior to just seeing him on TNA television. So once I saw what he was capable of, he instantly became like one of my favorites. Commentary wise, I think I would have to put like Mike Tenay and Don West second. As me being a SmackDown guy growing up, Michael Cole and Taz were the guys for me. I don't care what anybody else says. I was not a Raw guy growing up. That's the only exception.
Yeah, but Michael Cole's all right. Continue.
Listen, I will admit that Michael Cole, like, I liked him back in the day, but obviously growing up, it's like you kind of lose your taste in certain things. But yeah, Mike Tenay, Don West, they were different. And I remember specifically hearing Mike Tenay from like the WCW days, like, late WCW days. So I was like, holy shit, I remember him. So DVD wise, I don't recall when I first started collecting DVDs. Prior to me moving here, I did have a bunch of TNA DVDs that I was collecting, a lot of rare ones, a lot that I have recovered throughout the past couple of months, but I ended up giving away all my TNA DVDs because I was just like, this product's shit. At the time,
yeah, I'm right there with you.
I couldn't stand it anymore. I just thought they were so bland. I mean, I love the casing now. They're definitely, they're not as complicating now as like PWG or ROH DVDs. Like all the spines are the same, all color coordinated. They're all black. I love it. It's bland, but once you see like the covers, you have the match listings, some disc artwork. Unfortunately, no inserts, but you didn't really get a lot of spoilers. As you would get for WWE DVDs. Like if there was like a tournament, they wouldn't really announce like, oh, who's advancing to the semifinals of this tournament or who was in the finals of this tournament. Kind of similar to Ring of Honor DVDs. But yeah, TNA, past couple of months as I was getting acquainted with Rick, he was actually, when he invited me to his channel, the first thing that we covered was an Impact show. He was like, hey, do you watch Impact? And I'm like, that still exists? So I was like, yeah, why not? And I didn't know, I had no way of catching it out. So I was like, how the fuck do you watch the show? Oh, you have to have the Fight Network or you can have Twitch. All right, I'll download Twitch. Downloaded Twitch. And I remember going over the first episode with Rick, which you could catch here on the Pro Wrestle Zone podcast. And yeah, it was like one of those things like, all right, this is something that I'm going to have to keep tuning into. And there was a lot of familiar faces, and there was a lot of people who I wasn't so familiar with. Chris Bay, for example, I was familiar with him doing a jobber match on 205 Live. And I was also familiar with him doing YouTube videos prior to his wrestling career, who was also collecting wrestling DVDs. Just a couple of years back, so I was like, wow, this dude actually made it. And I'm sitting there like, wow, what the fuck are we doing with our lives? Just talking wrestling. But nothing new there. But once I seen him on Impact, I was like, wow, like this guy's phenomenal. Willie Mack. I was introduced to the North, who is probably one of my favorite tag teams today, next to FTR or the Revival, as you guys are familiar with. Um, Such a phenomenal team, and I didn't realize how great of a tag team they were until catching up on Impact again. And then after the recent release of WWE talents jumping shift, it was like, okay, this is getting interesting now. Deonna Purrazzo, Kurt Hawkins, the Good Brothers. Um, what's another name that come to mind? I don't know, but just certain names that just decided to jump ship. I was like, okay, this is something I'm going to have to tune in for. Eric Young, who recently became the TNA because it's Impact. Impact heavyweight champion before losing it to Rich Swann. That was one individual I believe they lowballed in WWE, who I believe would have had a lot of potential once growing up to the main roster, being called up. Obviously, that didn't happen, as he only made about maybe like one or two SmackDown appearances with Sanity before they were like, all right, we're going to switch things up. And that was practically the last of Eric Young. He made a few appearances on Monday Night Raw during the 24/7 championship storyline, but obviously that didn't really go nowhere. But my point is, today Impact Wrestling is definitely worth watching production wise, even if they don't have their own Thunderdome or they don't have like a limited capacity of a crowd. It's still one of those shows that gets you really invested into their programming. So.
Yeah, going back to the DVDs quick, I think the best way to describe them is they're very uniform. They all have the same great format. They all look great together on a shelf. And they did stray away from that. Like, I hate the blue spines we had in, like, 2013, 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God, those are awful. But, yeah, it's... They actually go for pretty damn cheap. But, yeah, when it comes to jumping talents, we kind of had, like, 2000... I think Jeff Hardy was like a really big one in 2004.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had Christian, Booker T, Kurt Angle. Like, you had all these names jumping over. And then we kind of saw that opposite effect around like 2013 and 14. Everyone was leaving. Samoa Joe. Like, AJ Styles, of course, in 2000. Well, he went to New Japan, but, he eventually made his way to WWE. And, we even saw Sting show up, regrettably. So, should have stayed away, man.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just like there was so much jumping back and forth. And a lot of those people, like, Eric Young, for example, ended up going back to Impact. So, what do you think your favorite addition to the roster was back when everyone jumped? Obviously, mine would be Christian Cage, and who do you think? And speaking of Christian, who do you really think kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They really excelled from jumping to TNA.
I'm gonna go with the same person you just mentioned, Christian. Obviously, I enjoyed his run when he first appeared in TNA. Obviously, he captured the NWA World Heavyweight Championship twice. I thought he had a very solid run. Obviously, he was able to like freelance and basically just be himself. Not saying that he wasn't himself in WWE, but he was given a more main event opportunity. But if I had to say somebody who really excelled in TNA, I'm not gonna lie. I'm probably gonna have to give it to Kurt Angle, only because he had a longer stint in TNA than his first WWE run.
Yeah, he even said it himself. Most of his favorite matches are from his TNA run. Look at his matches with Samoa Joe. Like, those are legendary. Those don't get talked about enough. That whole rivalry they had. And, of course, the not so legendary. I don't think so. The Jeff Jarrett's divorce storyline, and oh Lord. And it's actually pretty amazing. Karen is still with Jeff Jarrett, so to this day, she actually made a little cameo in the leading up to the Hall of Fame. So yeah, it's
Kind of reminds me. Kind of reminds me of the Kevin Sullivan, Chris Benoit situation with Nancy. So
yeah, that one ended very different though. Anyway, though,
yeah.
I've always said I'm not a Booker T fan. I think he's one of those people that he kind of, he went to TNA and just kind of left. Because you remember he introduced like the Legends title, and it was really goddamn
Yeah.
stupid.
And you
It's
know what?
just,
That's actually one that's one thing I couldn't understand about TNA. You bring a championship, okay, utilize it, but then it goes through all these name changes. Is first it's the Legends Championship, then it's the Global Championship, then I think it became like the Television Championship. It went through all these different name process, and then all of a sudden, I think Abyss or somebody was like the last person to hold that belt, and then you never saw it again.
well, what's the difference between a global and a world championship? It means the same goddamn thing.
I mean, I don't know, more internationally fucking found, I guess. I
Well,
don't
okay.
know.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, though, yeah, Booker T. I really don't. I just don't like Booker T. anyway, so I don't really think TNA did much for him. Jeff Hardy, I thought he had a really good singles run. He got to really show his heel side during his second TNA run, because he obviously went back to WWE in 2006, and then he lost on SmackDown and basically was taking a sabbatical, and he showed up in TNA, which wasn't the plan. He just kind
Right.
of did it off a whim. But I'm glad he did, because I like Jeff Hardy's second TNA run as well. That was when I was starting to really tamper off, but I still paid attention because I was a Jeff Hardy fan. So, I enjoyed his little heel run, except for his belt. Do you remember that belt?
Yeah, it was basically like a purple strap, and it basically was like his own art
Oh boy.
design, which I'm not really
Yeah.
sure. I'm pretty sure it's something that he designed. They were like, hey, put this on a belt,
I
and
am yeah, I am very against custom world title belts. Very against them. I don't care who it is. I don't customize the world title belt, because the belt, it's it's meant to be iconic. It's meant to be that top prize that only
right.
the best can hold. Don't And even like the stupid side plate thing, I hate that too. But yeah, I believe the belt should always stay untouched. You know, I mean, the saying is, the belt should make the man should make the belt. Don't take it too literally. Don't actually make the belt. But yeah, and like you said, Kurt Angle, it's just, to me, I think about his TNA career more than I do his WWE career, even his WWF career. I think he had a better run in TNA, and he wasn't in the best shape or position when he went in to
Right.
TNA, but he really he figured it out. He really did. We'll just put it that way. But who else?
You know what? There's a lot of people that I thought could have like really excelled once they went to TNA. For example, like during the early days of TNA 2002, obviously you had guys like Scott Hall. You had Six, who eventually jumped shift after being released by WWE. Somebody who had a very short stint. Mr. Perfect. Now I'm not saying that he could have been probably one of the top tier dogs, but he definitely could have been somebody who could have utilized younger talent and put him over. For example, guys like AJ Styles.
Well, we had Macho Man. That was, I believe, his
Um,
final match, right?
yeah, I believe it was like Jarrett, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash, as they were known as like the kings of wrestling, and they had
Yeah.
like these Elvis dressed as Elvis for some stupid fucking reason. And then you had I think it was like Jeff Hardy, Ron Killings, and then Macho Man, but Macho Man didn't show up till like the end of the match, so that was pretty much pointless.
Yeah, wasn't that like Victory Road 2004 or something? Or was it Turning Point 2004?
One of those two.
Yeah. Oh god. But yeah, it's unfortunate that that was his final match that I know of. But another one I did want to mention is Ken Anderson. I was always a huge Ken Anderson fan, and I thought he did really good work in TNA. I would kind of just tune in when he was on and look up clips and keep up with him. I don't think he ever did enough to make me like watch weekly, but he had good promos. He was always great in the ring. I think he's a tragedy, but
Yeah.
he got fucked over bad in
You
WWE,
know,
and
I was gonna say the way I see Ken Anderson was a big misconception.
mhm.
Obviously he had that big opportunity in 2007. That was obviously taken away from him once Edge decided, hey, I'm going to take your Money in the Bank briefcase. All right, sure, why not? But I mean, he did have the distinct honor of having Eddie Guerrero's last televised match,
Mhm.
which that's something I would probably brag about forever. If I was Ken.
And it's coincidentally like one of my favorite Eddie Guerrero moments ever. Like I just if Eddie's gonna go out, that if that was his final finish, that is one hell of a final finish to have if your name is Eddie Guerrero. Smacking the chair on the mat and throwing it to Kennedy.
Yeah,
It's just
Charles Robinson's just like, you hit him with the chair.
you son of a bitch. But yeah, that was the Survivor Series elimination qualifying match, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Something that I really didn't understand was why not have Ken Anderson replace Guerrero instead of having them replaced by, I think he was replaced by Orton during that Survivor Series team.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Orton was definitely there, but he was working the program with Taker, so I think like because obviously Taker came in at the very end, so they kind of had to throw that in there. But yeah, and who would you consider some TNA originals?
TNA originals, okay. Right off the back, I would automatically say AJ Styles. Um, James Storm. Oh, speaking of James Storm and Chris Harris was probably by far one of my favorite tag teams in TNA when they were America's Most Wanted, which I do have that DVD, but I believe it's the re-release. I know there was like a 2 disc set, and then they re-released the set. But yeah, I loved that team. Something that really just like captured me about that tag team, and I think it was the match against Simon Diamond and Elix Skipper at Turning Point 2004, where Elix basically just did the Hurricanrana on top of the cage.
Mm-hmm.
But that was probably like one of the most that was a match that probably like solidified TNA from just going forward and being a top tier organization.
Yeah,
Um,
that was
Another,
actually I think that was my first TNA DVD I bought as well.
I've still yet to get that. Other TNA originals. Oh boy, obviously the founder of TNA, Jeff Jarrett. Obviously him and his father basically decided to build this organization. Um, Probably Mike Tenay. I mean, obviously he was probably like one of the first commentators for for the first show, so I would definitely recommend saying like Mike Tenay, Christopher Daniels, another one who was, floating around in the indie scene like during the 90s, but also working, C shows for WWF and WCW and I think he made like one or two stints in ECW. So he was around. So to build off of Christopher Daniels, great choice. And this was like right around the time Daniels was floating around between Ring of Honor and TNA. So, he was still a workhorse. Another TNA original, I would say probably Jerry Lynn, because he was practically there when the company was founded. And he was also part of the first X Division title match between AJ Styles, Low Key, and I believe Psychosis, which was a fatal four-way match in which AJ Styles was declared the first TNA X Division champion. R-Truth, who went by many personas in his career. Obviously, he was known as K-Crush. After leaving or was released by WWF, I believe it was like early 2002. For some of you guys who don't recall, for some of you big WWE fans, R-Truth was in WWE prior to, prior to coming back to WWE or, just for what you know him as now. I believe he debuted in like late 2000 as a tag team partner for the Road Dogg, and he was known as K-Quick.
Yep.
And after Road Dogg got into some legal trouble, got released in like somewhere around 2001, floating around a little bit on Sunday Night Heat, Metal, and just house shows, got released, went to TNA, was known as K-Crush's first. Fun fact, he was the first NWA World Heavyweight, how should I say this? First African-American NWA World Heavyweight Champion for that organization. I believe that's when he went by the name Truth, and then that's when he was known as Ronda Truth Killings, part of the Three Life Crew with Conan and Road Dogg, who went on to go as Brian James or BG James. Yeah, I would definitely consider him a TNA original in his own right. I guess you could probably say Ken Shamrock. I don't know about you, but I mean, Ken Shamrock, who's recently been with Impact since returning last year, he was the first NWA World Champion for Total Nonstop Action after winning that Battle Royal. And ended up, there was like a finals after the Battle Royal between Ken Shamrock and a gentleman called Malice, who I believe he was known as The Wall in WCW, with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat as the special guest referee. Ken Shamrock ended up becoming World Heavyweight Champion that night. He didn't make too much of an impact, no pun intended, in TNA, but it was very short stint, and after that, he ended up transitioning back into UFC. I'm not sure. I'm not sure for any other TNA originals. What do you got in mind?
Oh God. I think we covered them. I mean, Robert Roode. Wow, Bobby Roode. When did he show up?
I want to say maybe around 2003.
Yeah. I always think of him as like one of those TNA stable guys. And I prefer Beer Money. But my all-time favorite TNA tag team is Motor City Machine Guns. Those are my favorite. And you gotta love the superhero trio, Curry Man, Shark Boy, and Super Eric. I love me some Curry Man. Come on.
I don't know. I'm not sure if Daniels was trying to spice things up or they just wanted to go with the new gimmick, but I don't know about that.
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, you have that like first wave, and then you have that really big like second wave, which was what I think solidified the company. And I think the acquisition of Sting is just shocking.
well, you got to think about this too. Prior to them actually getting a full-time deal with Sting in like late 2005, early 2006, he did make a couple TNA appearances in 2003. I believe he was tag teaming with like Jeff Jarrett, or I believe he was in a tag team match with AJ Styles. It's in one of the Asylum DVDs.
Hmm.
Not sure if it's two or one, but I know he made some appearances. I'm not sure if that was to promote the Moment of Truth DVD, which came out in 2003.
A
But
masterpiece. Be sure to pick this up.
yeah,
Yeah. Because
but
I've totally watched it since I bought it.
or you guys can just find it online free on YouTube. Yeah, but yeah, prior to those appearances, we didn't see Sting again until obviously they foreshadowed his debut by I'm not sure if you remember this moment, but they had the black steel chair in the ring with the boots, the coat, and the bat. The lights go out. As soon as the lights turn back on, that's all you see is his gear. And it's like, oh shit,
Yeah,
here we go.
yeah, it's good. It's good storytelling. You're not just having him pop up out of nowhere. And yeah, it was such a cool time because you have to look at that roster. It's one of the greatest rosters of all time. You look at like 2005 to 2008. They had one of the most jam-packed, talented rosters you could possibly have. Yeah, there you go. Final resolution. Um, it's stupid how talented that roster was, and it did show. Like there was a point where TNA was actually great wrestling, and unfortunately, I feel like everyone just knows it as like a joke company. If you have younger fans, they don't even know that TNA was called TNA at one point. I still call it TNA. I don't. I just can't. I can't help it. It's always going to be TNA to me.
Yep.
But it's just unfortunate that it has such a negative stigma to the point where a lot of its history is just forgotten. People just don't want to acknowledge it. And there was a point in like 2014 and 15 where it kind of had a little bit of a resurgence. Um, I went to a TNA live show in 2015, and it was great. Because, like I said, after Hogan and Bischoff showed up, I was done. But I got into it a little bit in 2014 and 15. Is that when it was like on Pop TV or something? There were so many networks, but I started watching it and I was like, all right, this, it's not the original TNA or anything, but it's at least worth watching. I love EC3 as world champion. I loved his match with Rockstar Spud, aka Drake Maverick, which is a terrible fucking name, but that match was great. And like I said, you had, well, to some people in 2015, 16, you had the broken Matt Hardy gimmick, which I didn't watch it live. It took me a little while to actually watch it, but that was one of those things that started in TNA. It was foreshadowed a little bit in the Hardy show, but no one really knows what the Hardy show is anyway. So, what were your thoughts on the whole broken? Well, first of all, what were your thoughts on kind of the mid 2010s for TNA?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I was still watching TNA at that time. It wasn't religiously as I was watching WWE as a kid, but I started to get more pulled into TNA once I saw like, okay, Hogan's in charge, Bischoff is going to be in charge. Let's just see where it goes. Um, Obviously, Jeff Hardy making his comeback. There was the match between Sting versus Rob Van Dam, which I was like, oh, RVD's here now too. So I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit interesting. But then, further down the line, it was kind of just like, what the fuck? You had Hall, Nash, and Six come together. Like, you really think that was a good idea, bringing those three into the same company, especially with the state of mind Scott Hall was in? Yeah, nope, not gonna work. And then, they called themselves the band. They came out with Wolfpack instrumental music, which I don't know how WWE doesn't have the license for that, but they have the license to the theme with lyrics. Kind of baffling, fuck logic, right? And then, yeah, Eric Young joined the group after being against the group, so that made no sense at all. I remember specifically Orlando Jordan making his appearance with the
Oh
company,
God,
and
yeah.
he, oh boy, very, let's just say, very feminine. And I guess he was able to express himself, which I never knew he was gay.
No,
Um,
he's
and,
bisexual. He's not
or,
gay.
bisexual, excuse me. And I remember he was just like ascending from the Raptors one episode, and Taz was just like, "What the hell?" And he had all this caution tape around him, nothing but caution tape. And I'm just like, "Okay, I think I need to stop watching TNA." Nothing against the talent of
That's
Orlando
when you
Jordan.
stopped.
That's when I stopped. I mean, I would catch up with it here and there. Like, I heard about the Bound for Glory 10-10-10, Jeff Hardy turning heel, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're here. And it's like, that was dumb. What? Um, I remember specifically Brian Kendrick returning. Just multiple names. And then they did that whole Immortal faction with Ric Flair, Bobby Roode, James Storm, AJ Styles, Desmond Wolfe, also known as Nigel McGuinness. But one of my favorite moments from that era was the standoff between Ric Flair and Jay Lethal. I'm not sure if you remember that, but Jay Lethal basically impersonated Ric Flair, taking off all his clothes, throwing his coat on the ground, doing the knee drop. I couldn't stop laughing. That was probably like the most hilarious moments. Probably one of my favorite moments in TNA was, that moment between Flair and Jay Lethal. But oh boy, around that time, it was difficult to watch. And obviously they were flipping the names of the titles, like, oh, Legends Championship turns into the Global Championship. And during my, viewing point of watching TNA, I think something that really stuck out was the X Division, and that's what I believe made TNA so successful.
Mm-hmm.
Because, not gonna lie, at one point I thought the X Division was better than the Cruiserweight division in WWE, hands down.
Oh yeah. Dude, the X Division itself could have had its own weekly show, and I would have watched that. I mean, it was packed. You had the actual legitimacy to the title. I could barely even follow the cruiserweight division in WWE. The X Division somewhat reminded me of what I loved about the WCW cruiserweight division, which is about the only thing I loved about the later stint of WCW. And you had the Ultimate X match, which I'm not into gimmick matches, but I always thought that match was really fun. And you had the time to shine. You had AJ Styles, of course, just killing it absolutely every damn week. And speaking of hard to watch, I don't want to talk about it too much because it's painful, but Aces and Eights. That is one of the worst fucking things I've ever seen in my life. I think they give Retribution a run for their money. Like, you had Bully Ray, which I will say, we forgot Team 3D jumping. That was a big accusation back then, and it was, oh my god, I love Team 3D in TNA. And he's grabbing a DVD. What's he getting?
It's
Well, there you go.
yeah.
But yeah, you of course had them being broken up, and you had Bully Ray, being that heel. He was a great heel. But then you had him marrying Brooke Hogan, and it's just like you had all these great people, all this great talent. It's almost impossible to fuck it up. And they somehow did. And it's just like modern WWE. They have such a stacked and packed, talented roster, and it's nauseating every week. Like, I just don't know how you can take Bully Ray, who is a great talent. He has fucking heel heat out the ass, and you have him marry Brooke Hogan.
Now, during that whole Aces of Eights run, first of all, I hated it. I'm sure there was a lot of people who hated that faction. Only because it reminded me of my favorite show at the time. My favorite show of all time was Sons of Anarchy. Love that show.
I think that's what they were. I think that's what they were doing. They were trying to capitalize on that.
Pretty much. I mean, if you look at one of the DVD pay-per-view posters, it's basically similar to the season 1 DVD cover of Sons of Anarchy. So if you put those in comparisons, it's like dead giveaway.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. It's embarrassing. That storyline went on for years too.
And two, what was your thoughts when Devon was revealed as the leader of Aces and Eights?
I mean, it doesn't work.
No.
It's just he's not. I just never looked at him as a heel. I never did. I just. It just doesn't fit. Like, it's hard to explain. I don't think Devon is, no offense to him, someone that should really be in the limelight. I look at him as always kind of the sidekick, and that's no offense to him. But for him to be the leader, that's just there for shock value. It's anticlimactic. It's literally, it was just to shock everybody. Because it was shocking. Nobody expected that. But it was shocking for all the wrong reasons. It's like the gobbledygooker, all right? Nobody expected that thing to come out of there, but it did. It was shocking, but for the wrong reasons.
Now, from my understanding, that was Hector Guerrero under all that.
Yeah, it was. That's sickening.
But answering your second question about Broken Matt, I kind of found it as a big career resurgence for Matt Hardy. Because the way I see it, years, probably since his return in WWE in 2005, which was probably like the last interesting thing about Matt Hardy was that whole storyline between him and Edge and Lita. He was pretty much a bland character. I mean, no offense, but I was tired of hearing that fucking tornado fucking theme song.
God.
And him coming out with the V Wanda and him, he was so bland. I couldn't take it anymore. No offense to him. I mean, obviously they tried to turn him heel in 2009 after Royal Rumble, leading up to probably didn't last too long, probably till like Backlash or so.
Yeah, Backlash was the I Quit match, and that was it. And it was originally supposed to be Christian coming out, making his big return, and then it was going to lead to Jeff Hardy and Christian at WrestleMania, but they did not end up going with that. Because that would have made sense and would have been cool, so that's why we didn't get that.
Boy, what a low blow. But, yeah. I didn't understand it, switched up the gear, went with these fucking, like, Kingdom Hearts fucking key fucking tights, whatever the hell he was wearing at the time. He didn't seem like a heel. If you're going to make somebody a heel, you got to repackage him. Change the theme. You're still having him come out to that shitty fucking theme. He shouldn't. He should have a brand new theme.
And
But
you remember when he was like orange because he would like spray tan really bad during his heel run, and then
that was
and then you remember in 2011 when he went to TNA, he had those braids.
not only did he have braids, but he got fat. And we
Yeah,
used to, and I remember I used to
Fat
call him Fat
Hardy.
Hardy.
It's too easy, but yeah.
That was so hilarious. And then it was like I remember one point in TNA, Matt Hardy comes out and they're going up against and James Storm and Bobby Roode. And I remember that whole storyline where James was just like, "Oh, call him out. It's going to be your brother Jeff." It was like a mystery opponent for, I believe, Sacrifice 2011, one of those years. And I remember, James Storm's like, "Oh, come on, we already know who your partner is. It's Jeff Hardy." And then all of a sudden you see Chris Harris, who doubled the amount of weight. I'm like, what the hell? Oh, speaking of Chris Harris, that is one guy who was very underutilized, very underrated, who I thought could have been top tier with James Storm as a singles competitor, moving into the future of, Impact Wrestling. Obviously, that didn't come to be. The tag team split. He was floating around in the singles competition for a while. Then he got released. Then all of a sudden, I see him on ECW one day, WWE's version, and it's like he has like the segment backstage with Armando Alejandro Estrada. I'm not sure if you guys remember that guy, but Umaga's manager, who ended up becoming the ECW general manager, which was, I don't know how the fuck I remember that, but that just like came out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
I remember it was like, knock, knock, who's there? Brent Walker. And I'm going to knock your brains out. And I was just like, that's it? That's all you got? And he had that one match, he lost, and then it's like you never saw him again. And, until that TNA return, which that ain't gonna last long either. Who knows what the hell he's up to nowadays? But it'd be pretty cool to have one final reunion of AMW in TNA, as James Storm also has recently returned to the company as recent. So
Yeah, for me, the whole broken thing. Oh God, I was very split because I take wrestling very seriously. But from a writing point of view, I'm like, all right, a lot of this is genius, but I don't like what it does to the company. But the company is kind of a joke at this point anyway, so I'm just like, you can only really go up from there. And it was really Matt Hardy taking it for himself. Like, he really didn't bring much to the company as he did for himself, because he was having a rough time in life. So it was either that or he's just pretty much gone forever. It was risky though. He did take a very big risk because that either makes or breaks your career, something like that.
but
I'm
look, before he even went to transitioning into the broken character, he did manage to win the TNA World Heavyweight title. So the way I see it, that was a groundbreaking moment for him. Finally winning a big title outside of a company where he practically started from the bottom from. So
Yeah, and I think I'm at the point now where I just hate it because it's so overdone. We've had it in TNA, we've had it in WWE, which that was just, yeah. And now we have it in AEW. I'm just so sick of this broken shit. I wish it would have been like a one-time thing, that like series, the ultimate deletion, the final deletion. I wish it would have just been that whole storyline in TNA and then never bring it back in WWE or AEW. Just abandon it while it's good, because now it's saturated. It's all the same shit. The one at Full Gear, that was, I wanted to just get up and take a shit, honestly. But yeah, Matt
you know what?
Hardy.
That doesn't even draw the line for me and Matt Hardy. I think what really drew the line between the broken character was the incident that happened at Double or Nothing
Well,
between him
yeah.
and Sammy. That was just like, you want to talk about broken. He was pretty much damaged right there.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, I think they could have pulled something off from that. I mean, obviously they did, but I mean, I think it went to a degree where it shouldn't have gone too far. So
Yeah, All Out was a complete disaster. I fucking hated that pay-per-view. But, yeah. Do you have any, like, I don't know, final thoughts here? We still have an unboxing to do.
final thoughts. Before I get to my final thoughts, I guess I could talk about my favorite matches. Boy, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I could go through all my DVDs right now and just, what, one right off the back would have to be Genesis 2006. We had the dream match of the decade between Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle, which I just thought that was phenomenal. Finally witnessing these two inside, the same ring, which that's another thing that I liked about TNA. TNA was unique. And what I mean by unique was obviously their not match stipulations, but their types of matches. They created the X Division match. They created the eight-sided ring, which I thought was pretty cool at the time, having an octagon ring.
It was a
Um,
6.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. 6, 8, somewhere around there. Yeah. TNA was very innovative, very influential. But yeah, going back to these matches, Genesis, November 19th, 2006. Yep, 2006. Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe. Another one, DVD that I don't have from Turning Point 2009. Outside of this triple threat match, I enjoyed this triple threat match for the TNA World Heavyweight Title against it was AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Christopher Daniels. Now,
Yep.
outside of what pay per view was it?
That one was Unbreakable.
Which I do have.
That's a rare one.
Yeah, right here.
To me,
brand new seal.
Yeah, to me, that's the best TNA match ever, hands down.
But honestly, between this match and Turning Point 2009 triple threat that they had, they were both phenomenally good. So I one or the other for me. And then probably one of my favorite TNA World Heavyweight Championship matches from Bound for Glory 2007, Kurt Angle versus Sting. So that was definitely the groundbreaking moments for Sting in his career. Fun fact: when it came to watching Sting, I didn't discover Sting or actually watch any of Sting's matches until he appeared in TNA. So,
yeah, I would say my all-time favorite was Turning Point 2004, America's Most Wanted versus Triple X. That's my favorite TNA match. That's one of the first ones I ever saw. Like, it was just insane. Like, that, to me, I think that's the most memorable moment from any TNA fan. Like, that's kind of the one that sticks in their minds. That's kind of like when you look at WWF, Mick Foley falling off the cell. That's a moment they will always remember no matter what. And this is kind of like that in the same degree. Like, that Hurricanrana off the cage, that could have been a disaster. That had like a 10% chance of working. But, everyone remembered, where they were when that happened. It was such a cool moment. And that's my favorite match. And then, like I said, Unbreakable, Styles, Daniels, and Joe. I think that's their best match they've ever put on. And I believe that's the only 5-star match that Meltzer ever gave TNA, right?
as far as I recall, yeah,
That's
pretty
sad.
much. But Anyway, before we sign off here, we actually have some unboxings. So, Freak, if you want to be, first dibs.
All right, so
Yeah.
I do know what this is, and this is from yours truly. The second unboxing I have from you this week. So this is from Jammin'. Thank you, Jammin' JD. I don't know who you are, pal, but thanks. All right, so here we have it all sealed up. Jammin' JD sports cards. There you go, free promotion. All right, so what we have is this is beautiful, a dual autograph. We have Taz and SmackDown's greatest announcer, Funaki. So,
man.
Yeah, this is from 2020. And this is a beautiful card. It's thick. I'm not going to take it out, but you can see. Pretty damn cool card. Like, that's one you just, I feel like I've never seen this type of card. What is this? Leaf? Yeah, Leaf Ultimate Wrestling. Yeah, this is one of the newer ones, 2020. It's beautiful. It's like, it's glossed a bit. The gold. I love it. There's a lot of care put into these Leaf cards, but I haven't seen any like the newer Leaf cards, so this is awesome. So yeah, there you have it.
You know what? As soon as I saw that, initially I thought, okay, SmackDown. So I was like, all right, let me get this for free. And those type of cards too, they're pretty affordable. So I was like, put my money on that. And also got Rick a card this week. I got JJ a card, which he received out like a week or two ago, of the Honky Tonk Man and Johnny B. Dad. Just unique signings. So, Speaking of unique signings, I'm not sure how unique this gentleman is, but I have an unboxing here from High Spots, my favorite place of all time. So, let's open this up here. And I couldn't pass this up. So let's open this from inside here. Okay, all right. So what we have here, first off, is Vampiro 8x10 autograph. Very well designed.
Beautiful signature
there.
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably have to top that with Jeff Hardy in a way. But this is a photo from WCW, obviously. And then with the certificate of authenticity.